Let
Hi,
the fun
everybody.
begin.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everybody. Welcome to GenX Think Tank, Episode 4. Today is Tuesday, December 6th. I'm 16th. I'm Hessie Jones. Tonight we're going to be talking about reinvention. I also want to introduce my colleague, Jason Konopinski, who will be helping me guest moderate tonight. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce our panel of GenXers. I want you to state your name, what you do, and where you actually fall within the GenX spectrum. Okay, so let us start with Bob.
Why do I have to start? Because I'm old?
Yeah.
That's totally unfair.
He has the whiskey. That's why it's
I have the whiskey. Sorry, thank you. Thank you for breaking
You're
that.
sounding
little
like a
secret.
millennial now.
Yes. So
Can't
my name is Bob Ledrew. I live in Ottawa, Ontario, which for those of you south of the border is Canada's capital city. I'm a communications consultant here. I've been doing communications since the days when you would do radio by going out with gigantic cassette recorders and capturing the sound. So since the late 1980s, and I've reinvented myself at least once, and I suspect I may be in that position again right now, even as we speak.
Perfect. Okay, Jennifer.
Yes, hi, I'm Jennifer Windrum, and I live in awesome Omaha, Nebraska, right in the middle of the country. If you don't know that, you must come here. My background is journalism, public relations, and social media strategy. Used to be in the advertising agency world, was a reporter many moons ago, but what I'm doing now is I'm a social entrepreneur, and I deal with smack monkeys, these little guys that smack cancer, and it all came about through my mom's journey with cancer. So I don't know what I'm doing right this moment. I'm still learning the all the ropes of being an entrepreneur. So yes, change and reinventing.
Perfect. I'm sure we'll learn about all those smack monkeys later on.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark.
So my name is Mark Babbitt. I'm CEO and founder of a talent community called U-Turn. I think I'm officially a boomer, although that depends on which expert you talk to. I'm at the very least a cusper, but have had, 7, 8 reinventions myself. So looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Awesome. Thank you. Matt.
I am currently in Casper, Wyoming. I have a master's degree. I'm serving as a guest editorialist for a small paper in Colorado, and I'm just looking forward to hearing what everything has to be said.
Great. Thank you. Ryan?
My name is Ryan Pennell. I am a global hedge fund manager, so I am the token corporate shill bad guy this evening. You can ask me about interest rates if you really want to, or bubbles or whatnot. I'll lie to you the same as everyone else does.
I'm instituting a drinking game, so whenever someone says the word shill, I'm going to take a drink.
Work that in even more now, Bob. Shilling for the man.
My man.
Prior to this, I was a film and television executive. That career ended with me as a reality TV producer, something that I don't recommend as a career choice to anyone. It seems like fun, and it is for about 15 minutes. And after that, it's grating, and it makes you lose all faith in humanity on the whole. So, I've reinvented myself 3 times, I think, at this point. Software maven, reality TV producer, and now hedge fund manager. This is the easiest and most fun.
That's cool. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot of these stories, and it's really, I'm actually really pumped because there's a lot of positive stuff that's coming out of here from the reinvention perspective. So we're going to try to get Charlene on. I know I've added her a couple of times, but we're going to resume the broadcast regardless. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of background in order for us to frame the discussion. As you know, GenXers born between 1965 and 1980 are now reaching their middle age. As the oldest of the GenXers start to turn 50, and I think that's this year, things are going to start changing for us. In a typical midlife mode, or crisis mode, we're changing our lifestyle, living our dreams, breaking new ground in our careers, traveling the world, or that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing right now. But the truth is, especially for Gen Xers, most of our adulthood has been draped in constant change, and most of it has, for the most part, been driven by the economy. There was one researcher that talked about Gen Xers always living in this state of triage, where we're always in some kind of survivalist mode, and we're not thinking long term. At least that's what they say. So around 1991, when the film Slacker came out, I don't know if you guys remember that, some of the journalists were actually waving a critical finger at us as we were starting to emerge as adults, and they said that we were reluctant to grow up, and that we were pretty much disdainful of earnest action. I really don't know what that means. But some of the business school management books actually defined our generation as very adaptable, but reluctant to make decisions. And now the boomer managers are actually starting to call on Gen Xers to take on leadership roles. The reality is, right now, we are in the cusp of making some serious changes. A lot of the boomers are starting to retire. And because we have endured perpetual change in our lives, it puts us in a prime position to actually take on make some substantial changes in business today. So when I talk about reinvention, yes, we are moving towards midlife, most of us. Yes, we've experienced change throughout our lives. But change can happen not only because of economics, it can happen because of circumstances or introspection, and where we've decided to do something different. Okay, so I'm going to close with this before I get Jason to start asking some of our questions. And I want you guys to think about this. So we finally have the opportunity to recognize, witness, outgrow, and ultimately discard the roles, identities, and positions we have assumed over the course of our lives. Whether or not that's true, I mean, that's something that we're going to debate tonight. Okay? So I'm going to open it up to Jason, and he's going to lead with questions about reinvention. And Jason, take the floor.
Excellent. Well, Hesse, I guess I should probably do by way of a very quick introduction, you know, kind of my place in this. Mark's at the front of Gen X, and I'm at the very tail end. I'm a cusper on the opposite end, and so I'm very interested to see how this conversation will evolve. Particularly look at people who are kind of right on the edge, like I am. So I think the very first question is, let's deal directly with those stereotypes. Is change, and I think we can probably put a little context to this, is change intrinsic to the way that, you know, this generation really, or how comfortable is this generation with the idea of change? I mean, I think we can, I know I'm editorializing at this point, but I want to say that between whether change is like this is an internal shift, a way of being shift, or this is a response to life change, whether that means where we are and versus where we want to be, or circumstances that have been thrust upon us. So
okay.
Please.
Who wants to start?
I guess I can start with that. And I want to start first by saying that I'm really impressed that even though I'm the token, well, Hesse and I are the token Canadians, that Jason is dressed more than twice as Canadian as both Hesse and I combined.
Hey, wait a minute. Ryan's Canadian too.
Oh, Ryan, you're Canadian too. I had no idea.
I am.
He's kind of he's half American. Are you not, Ryan?
I am. So opportunistically, I play whichever card suits me.
Fair enough.
I'm from Wisconsin. Is that close enough?
Yeah.
Ryan, where are your loyalties? That's my question.
It depends. Ultimately, I've got to go with where I was born. Loyalties are in Canada, but when it's something entrepreneurial, then I'm pro USA all the way. Whenever we've been down there, I shake my finger and I say, that shit would never happen up here. You'd be ashamed of yourself.
And 1 quarter in the swear jar for Ryan.
Take a drink, Bob.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. No, I'll make a point and then I'll take a drink. What's really interesting is living in Canada's capital city, and I suspect it may be similar for anybody who lives in a capital city, is that you have a lot of people who work in public service positions, which tend, at least here, to have been relatively stable in nature. People choose the public service as a career. They give up a certain amount of earning potential in exchange for a certain amount of stability and benefits and the sort of a pension down the road, what gets called the golden handcuffs here. And I haven't followed that path myself. My partner, on the other hand, has. She's been in the public service for a couple of decades now. I've never worked in government, and when I have worked for other employers, it's been a whole mix of larger institutions where you get benefits to smaller organizations where it's essentially I just saw a cat tail just
sorry. Put her down. She keeps coming back up. Oh, there it is again.
There you go.
Okay, fine.
Anyway,
sorry.
I think I've been in the relatively lucky position where when time has come, I've had the relative luxury of being able to reinvent myself to a certain extent at the expense of my partner, because she's the one with the quote-unquote real job. So I've, in some ways, felt really fortunate that I've been able to do that without a gigantic cost economically. We've been always able to make that work. Who I feel bad for are the people at the other end of this generation, because I don't think that those jobs that like my partner Kathy's gotten, I don't think those jobs exist anymore. And so I think that this process of reinvention, as necessary as it is going to be a much more costly one for individuals and for families.
I'm glad you brought up being able to reinvent with a partner, because I've just been thinking, like, I'm single, I don't have a partner, and I don't belong to a hedge fund, so I can't really reinvent myself. Do you know what I mean? There are plenty of people in New York who are all like, I'm going to be a baker, I'm going to be an artisan pickle maker, and then you see their previous career. I'm so not kidding, you guys. And their previous career was almost always hedge fund banker or lawyer. And for those of us who aren't that and who don't have a supportive partner, it's kind of really hard to do a full reinvention. It ends up just being a tweak, or maybe sort of a lateral move, but that's a whole other conversation.
So Charlene, since you just joined us, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then talk about change from your perspective.
Well, I was born a poor black child in Detroit. Thank you for getting that.
You realize this is being recorded on YouTube. Never mind.
Thank you for getting that joke. Well,
that was brilliant.
Well, I don't know. How much do you want to know? My background was in journalism. I was in tech writing for a while. And I've been a freelancer doing various writing/content things since about 2006.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah. And so talk about the same question that Bob had about change, specifically what it means to you in your life.
Oh, I didn't hear the question, actually. I popped in late. So can you?
Yeah,
I need to start looking up. Sorry, I keep looking down and headphones like y'all. Hold on.
Okay.
You'll be much more
tell her.
composed in the next one.
There we go. So like the question was, it was actually in response to a quote.
Okay.
Really looking, whether change, how this generation really views the idea of change. Is it something that we tend to be very comfortable with, or is there a serious resistance to it? That there's this sense that some sociologists have looked at this generation and said that they're constantly living a life of triage. It's one emergency to the next, and so that there never really is a significant opportunity to shift in a meaningful way because we're always on it's always panic mode.
Yeah.
I don't think it's panic mode. I think it's a change that we've come to accept, but we would like a degree of stability when it presents itself. But until that time, change is change. It is what it is.
I don't know. I think the difference between reinvention and triage is whether or not you sucked at whatever you did before, right? Because if you were good at it, if you have the luxury of reinvention, oh well, this was all right, but I don't care for that lifestyle, and so I'm going to reinvent myself as whatever. Whereas if you're constantly fired from one project manager job to another one, to a this, to a that, then it's triage, and it's constantly going from place to place to place to place.
I think you nailed it though, Ryan. Being a luxury of reinvention, right? Because
it is, right? It's not as easy as just saying, "Well, I'll just go out and reinvent myself tomorrow." Depending on what you want to reinvent yourself as, it's time, it's money, it's a supportive partner putting up with your reinvention. Sometimes that involves you transitioning to something that you don't know anything about whatsoever. I was an artisan pickle maker and I'm going to be a web developer. Well, good luck with that. That's a lot of code work you're going to have to do there,
So I want to hear from Mark.
Part of this,
I just want to say first.
Say that.
Oh, sorry, Jennifer. Go ahead.
It might just. Go ahead.
I just first want to say all these studies that put 82 million people into one composite person it's just bullshit, right?
I agree.
We all have our lives. We all have every time that I reinvent, or the people that we work with at U-Turn or Switch and Shift reinvent, there's almost always a pretty big change in their lives, whether it was a layoff or a crisis at work or a crisis with ourselves. I was an engineer in Silicon Valley for 8 years before I threw my hands up and said, "This sucks. This is not who I'm supposed to be. This is not what I want to be." And it took a long time to get there, right? So I don't think we just, to Ryan's point, I don't think we just wake up in the morning and go, "Hey, I'm going to reinvent myself." There's always something pushing us, and we do it in a very personal, individual manner. It's not like 82 million people all do it at once.
Yeah, but there has to be a point when it's almost a turning point where you say, okay, this is not working, and then you kind of start to veer off on a path where it takes you to where you really want to be. But like you said, it doesn't happen. It happens over the course of time. But when do you get the gumption to actually, or have the guts to actually follow that path? That's the true kicker, especially for people who don't have the resources or have just gotten a baby. They can't reinvent themselves in that way.
And I think that Hesse, that's a really good point. And the way that I kind of frame that is whether, really I think fundamentally the way that I view this idea of change, it is a shift in a way of being. It's a shift in it almost becomes a shift as a existential crisis. I think we've probably all encountered them at one point in our lives. It's whether you wake up in the big giant cushy job and you think, shit, I can't stand the work that I'm doing, or I can't stand the hours that I'm putting in. Like this, there is a better life for me that's more fulfilling. Or the flip side of that change is like that's change that's thrust upon us. That's the layoff. That is a a major health scare or dealing with an illness. Like those are different sets of circumstances than something that's going on in my head and saying I need to shift in some way, and now I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Did anyone else start having existential crises when they were in their 20s like me? I hated corporate life right away.
Yes.
Yes. Not a fan of that whatsoever. In fact, I was going to say, I don't know if it's just me that's completely psycho, but
Yes.
Hey,
I didn't ask you a question there. But I live for change. I get bored extremely easily, and
yes,
I also thrive, unfortunately, I think, on crises sometimes. Like I was saying earlier, my background's a TV reporter, public relations, social media relations, advertising agency. I was always wanting to create change, especially in the ad agency where I was. This is when social was just starting, and I had my clients. I had PR clients that were happy to do social, but I couldn't get the agency on board. I'm like, are you serious? It was this huge internal battle, and I'm like, I can't handle this. The wheels are just turning too slowly. And I did work in public service too, Bob, as you mentioned earlier, and it just about killed me. I don't know if part of it is personality-wise, but also circumstantial. When with my mother getting cancer, and then the journey that we went on together, that is where I've ended up now. So I look back and I think, that's really bizarre how all of my background has kind of led me to where I am, and it all fits. And I don't know if that's just a coincidence. I mean, I had no idea my mom was going to get cancer and this was all going to happen. I just think it's kind of serendipitous, really. Except the psycho part, but I live on change. I cannot stand stagnation or not trying to create change.
So how many times would you say that you've created change for yourself?
Oh, I guess that depends on what you consider creating change. When I was a reporter, I thought I was going to do that. I was a TV reporter here in Omaha. I thought, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. I started that and was like, this really sucks. This is such a bummer, and this is not what I thought it was all about. Then I went to the dark side, as they say, PR. I love PR. Love PR. I love it. And social media strategy. I love all of that. But making the change from that career to becoming a cancer advocate, lung cancer advocate with my mom's cancer. She never smoked, and she got lung cancer, so we did a campaign. And then from then on, her journey led to the creation of these little guys that I have sitting here called Smack Monkeys. So I just, during her illness, I up and created this startup, and I'm like, how in the world did this just all happen? I don't even know. But here I am, and if someone would have told me I would have been selling monkeys 5 years ago for cancer, I would have been, what on earth are you talking about? So, again, part of it's, yes, I look for change, but then again, I think maybe you just look for the opportunity in the change, or the way to create the change that you feel is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, absolutely.
So I want to make
throw out?
Go ahead, Charlie.
I was going to say, can I throw out the whole cliche of we're the generation of divorce, and so we're used to change, and so we're comfortable with change, and we're comfortable with uncertainty, and so we end up creating that for ourselves. That may or may not be true for some of you. I think it's sort of true for me, and I've changed jobs a lot, but I don't know if this is something to be proud of or not. I've moved 35 times in my life, all voluntarily.
Wow.
I made, and like, a lot of those are.
Do you even unpack now?
You know what? I just moved back to New York, and I had a total of, get this, 20 boxes. That's all that I own right now.
Okay.
I'm like I'm a professional nomad, and I'm starting to wonder if I have a little OCD about owning things, like as in like I'm the anti-hoarder or something. Anyway, but that's that is a quick way to throw yourself into change. Moving to a new town, having to reorient yourself. I almost think it's kept my brain really fresh and kept, you know what I mean? Like when you have to refigure things out. Like I'm one of these people, if I go to a new town, I get myself lost just to figure out how to get back to my house. And but sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this instead of reinventing myself career-wise, because I think what I do is I think, well, there's several things I could have done. I'm like a frustrated hairstylist. I mean, you can see my hair color red. I love red. I want to make everyone a redhead, blah, blah. But if I went back to school right now, everyone keeps saying you have to start by sweeping the floor. You have to start, you know, at like a $6 an hour job sweeping the floor. I can't do that. I'm 46. And I have a certain, you know, I like having, you know, my $10 cake. You know what I mean? And I don't. Anyway, where am I going with this? I've lost my train of thought.
Join the crowd.
Yeah, okay, good. It's late. It's good. Anyway, so change, yes. Anyway, but yeah, a lot of times I look ahead and I think, well, I could be a hair colorist, but I'm 46. How long would it take me to get up to the standard I want? Do I want to do that? I also make killer marshmallows. I've looked ahead on that. Could I make marshmallows and make a living at it? No, and I don't have a supportive partner or, you know, a hedge fund sitting in my bank that I can make marshmallows. So I end up staying
Not
in
yet,
stock.
at least.
We actually don't invest in that particular asset class. There's, as a commodity, it's unreliable.
Right.
There's one demographic, bunch of little freaking kids.
Marshmallows.
Ironically,
Don't the hipsters.
tied to chocolate and graham crackers. Like
There's been a lot of people get toasted in that sector.
That's right.
Do not leave down the marshmallows.
And here come the puns.
Board, man.
It's just one of those funny groups. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So if I'm just going to make kind of like an observation as I'm looking at the group,
Yes.
the majority of us have been in, like, we've started businesses. We've been, whether that, like, I say it all the time, for me, I'm kind of the accidental entrepreneur. Like, I never imagined myself to go out and start a business. But I found myself in 2007, I was working for Jupiter Images. I was in the stock photography industry. That company was acquired by Getty, and I lost my book of business literally overnight. When they transitioned everything from all of my existing agency clients went to an existing sales team under the Getty umbrella, and then I went, well, now what am I going to do? Because I didn't want to do all new business development working with one particular product. And I was lucky in that because I worked with those ad agencies for so long, they brought me in occasionally as for copywriting jobs, and that was the springboard into leading a life of a full-time freelancer. You know, doing content, doing web writing, doing kind of working in journalism in a lot of different areas. That gave me the opportunity, but I never set out to say I'm sick of working for the man and I'm going to start my own thing. Like, it was kind of it was an opportunity that presented itself, and I went, well, shit, why not try it?
And now you like it.
I do.
Right.
Could you go back working for the man?
I have my days. You know, I have my days when I say I would happily be the cog in somebody else's machine, but then I look around and I'm talking through you from a co-working space where I share. I'm around other entrepreneurs, most of whom are doing other creative work. I'm pointing across the room. There's a photographer, an event planner, a web developer, another web developer, environmental compliance guy. Like, it's a really diverse space.
That's cool.
And I couldn't do it. You know, like I like being. It affords me a level of flexibility, but very similar to the way that Bob has said, my wife has had to endure. Like, she is the
She's a solid breadwinner.
Like, that's the real solid breadwinner, and like, there was a significant shift in that when it went from being I was making more than she was to making significantly less. But when the projects came in, things were really good.
Right. So we can't say that we're all motivated by money, because some of us.
Money's nice, but it's not everything.
Yeah.
You know, do a lot of you guys, I mean, either work for yourselves or work for startups? Like, I've been a consultant since 2006, and I so much love the culture of startups, because then I do get to wear a lot of different hats, and I do get to try out a lot of different things. Like, I really can't stand being siloed. Yeah, I can't stand being siloed into one job. And I've had recruiters tell me, what did one of them say? She called me a purple squirrel. Is that a thing from some book or something?
A purple cow.
Like,
Purple cow.
No, that's a recruiting thing.
Yeah, that's Seth Godin.
okay, so yeah, she was saying like it was a bad thing, and I should mention that this is a recruiter in Minnesota, so maybe their minds are not startup based or whatever. But most of the time, recruiters are like, "Oh my God, you do UX, you do graphics, you do writing, you do everything. Oh my God, you're so great." You know, but anyway, and I bet you guys are like that too, right?
Yeah.
No.
I want to shift this a little bit, because Matt has a bit of a different experience than a lot of us, and I want you to relay your story a little bit, Matt.
Okay, what part?
Where you currently are right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My situation is kind of it's odd. I earned a master's degree. You know, like I mentioned at the beginning, I earned a master's degree in December of 2007, and I figured that within 6 months, maybe a year at the most, I'd be able to land some kind of a position within my degree field, and the rest would be history. I've had about 17 months of work since November of 2008. I'm currently looking for employment. And that's pretty much my situation for the interim.
What's your degree field, Matthew? I don't know.
International affairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so there's no demand, you're saying, for work like that, for that type of career?
There's demand, but the competition is very, very strict. And it seems like employers are using any and every excuse to keep people out. I'm in a situation where it's frequently I'm rejected for internships or entry-level work because of my master's degree, but then I can't find advanced level work because it requires several years of experience. And it's been a bind that I've been in for the last couple of years.
Geez, I think, Mark, he needs your help, right?
I've asked the question.
Yeah, you're definitely, Matt. You're definitely not on your own. I mean, we starting with GenX, you know, we fell into this what we call at the big lie, right? Where we were told if we get a college degree, especially a master's degree, that's all you need. You're set for your life. Education is everything. Boom, as soon as, especially a master's degree, you're going to have a job for life, and just since 2007, 2008, it's just not like that anymore. And I think that's part of the reinvention conversation. I think it was Jason who said earlier. There, you know, sometimes it's caused by just the economy in general makes us be inventive. It makes us be resilient. You know, it's not a choice. Certainly in your case, Matt, you're probably doing anything you can right now to get in your field of education. It's not easy.
No, I mean, right before we started, I got a phone call from an interview I had yesterday, and I learned that I wasn't selected for the position. The selected candidate was an attorney, whereas I just had a master's degree. So that's what I've been dealing with.
Yeah.
Well, guys, you know, a big part of this is how much the economy has changed. I mean, there's a couple studies out that say that by the year 2020, it's only 5 years from now, about half of us are going to earn money in non-traditional jobs, not from W-2 jobs, but from freelancing, contracting, you know, entrepreneurial work, super temp work, right? I got to tell you, it's about probably a third of us make money now that way. So 2020, 50% is not that big of a leap. And people with traditional degrees like international business or international relations, you know, attorney work, we're not used to that. We go to a big corporation, we work there, we get the gold watch in 40 years, then we go fishing, right? That's how
Mhm.
that's how we were raised. That's how our parents were raised,
Mhm.
and it's not like that anymore. It's
And
tough.
even
See, we
in
want to go fishing now.
Yeah.
But, and I mean, the irony is that if you go fishing now, you end up, people will sort of look at you and you know, the person that there are a few people on this hangout that I see a lot of status updates from. And so I'll see a status update from Jason, for example, and he's going to a yoga class, or in season he's out for a bike ride, two things that I'm interested in. And I can almost guarantee, and Jason, you can confirm or deny this, that there are people who sort of see those status updates from you on Facebook or elsewhere and think like, oh my God, these slackers, right? You know, he could be working and he's off, you know, doing his yoga thing.
Okay, who's saying that though? Like that's like parents. Parents don't understand.
People of a different generation and people of a different culture. So, for example, here in Ottawa, there are a lot of full-time public servants who would look at that and go like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I started as soon as I saw Jason's selfie on the log ride. As soon as I saw that, I knew he was a slacker.
No, so now, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was just going to say it's very funny that you mentioned that, Bob, because I was just thinking today, am I going to post this because it's going to look like I'm not working? I mean, I'm kind of self-conscious about that, actually. And thinking,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
No.
Nah.
Nope.
I don't know. It is interesting.
No, hey, Jennifer, I agree with you. I know exactly what you're talking about too.
Yeah. Ryan, can you come in here? Because like I want to hear your story. I want you to relay your stories of reinvention because you've done multiple, and you haven't been impacted by the economy. And I want your perspective on change, positive, mostly probably, but.
Yeah, although I mean I can't claim that any of it was really planned. It was fortuitous and somewhat accidental. I mean, I started my career in film and television. I made a movie very young. I was 26, and I was working professionally immediately after that. And I didn't like the process of basically asking people to open their wallets, which is what you do as a filmmaker. You've got to go around and you've got to push your creative ideas, typically to the least creative people on the entire planet, and convince them that that's a really good way for them to spend their money.
Yeah.
And they agree to do that if you make some truly horrendous concessions with your art. It just goes around and around and around in a little circle. And you know, in Canada, where I was working at the time, most filmmakers are pumping something out once every 5 years. It's horrible. It's not like it is in LA where you can do a feature every 1 or 2 years. And so my idea prior to 2000 was to switch into technology. I had a science background as well as an arts background. And I had this idea that I would build one of these newfangled .com things, which I figured was an ATM that would just print money for me.
All I need is a website and I'll make money. Remember that?
Like I built like a little web app. This thing would take me 3 months, and I would just sit there collecting this money, and then hey, self-financing. I would just go and make whatever movie I wanted with that money. And I was going to do that for a total of 3 years. And then that turned into 10.
Wow, you actually had a plan?
What was that?
I said you had a timeline? That's impressive.
Absolutely. Horribly unrealistic. I didn't know
Yeah.
what I was talking about. It turned out that the .com thing was actually a ton of work. And and it did not just print money. So the company grew. I grew. Responsibilities grew. The money came, but there's no freaking way that I could take that and then wander off and go make a feature film while what the company just ran itself over there, was supporting 4 out of the 5 largest banks in North America. So I felt trapped, and I thought I would never ever get back to film and television. And I watched the artistic edge that I had just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and then by some incredible stroke of luck, fortune, whatever, instead of me going back to film and television came back to me when technology started to play more and more of a role in its production. You started having more of the filmmaking process dominated by high-end technology, which I was building at this point. I was designing it. I built the first multi-core system before anybody else had a multi-core system. We built a 2K capable camera before 2K was a thing. And it was like, holy shit, okay, I know how to do this. This is actually coming back to my playground. So when I jumped back into film and television, I was able to jump back in with an enormous advantage because my peers hadn't left, done a technological reinvention, like could barely operate a computer, like barely get their email. So they didn't know what any of this, all these nonlinear editing programs and all these SFX programs and compositing, no idea what any of this shit was. And this was what I'd been playing in for almost a decade at a high level. So, you know, my reinvention seemed like, oh wow, you went from this to this to this to this, but there was an underlying plan in all of it. And then of course that ended for me when I guess I realized that the commercialization of the art was at a level I'd never imagined before. I mean, you guys probably think that there's a bunch of independent producers and content creators that are pitching stuff to broadcasters, like, hey, I got this idea for Walking Dead, or hey, I've got this great idea for Mad Men, and that's not how it works anymore. The broadcasters come to guys like you who pool big data and look through analytics and say, okay, here are the things that are trending that are going to hit right now. You got an animal focus. There should be a substance abuse, but not the main storyline, maybe a B character. Here are the age ranges. They give you this crap, and then they say, okay, do you think you can make a show out of that? You know, we need a show, and it should have bikinis, but not gratuitous sex, and not about women. Like, what the hell? And that was it. You know, I departed, and hedge fund management was just, for me, it came up. I had friends that said, you know, you have this trippy theoretical physics background. You should have a look at the markets now. They, again, are dominated by technology and automated systems. I looked. I saw a lot of exploitable things. And I like the behavioral finance component. I like there's a lot of psychology and little tick charts that go up and down. It's a graphic representation of the aggregate personality of everyone who's trying to get rich or trying to sell short or whatever it is. So roundabout, you know.
You intrigue me, Ryan, because I'm thinking you're this on this creative end of all of these other things, reality shows and the film industry, and then you end up in a hedge fund. And I'm thinking, it's funny because my husband is the numbers guy in our family. He works at a bank, and he's bored out of his mind. And yes, he's having to compromise because of what I'm doing, which I feel horrible for. But anyway, he and you should talk. But anyway, on the other side of that, I hate it because I'm the creative person. But so he's the financial guy, but he also has some of that creativity too, which just kind of pisses me off because he's not supposed to be that well-rounded, but he is. But it's not supposed to work that way. Luckily for our kids, it did. But when I think of people in hedge funds or in finance, but you're kind of more on the. When you explained it, I guess I understood it a little bit better where you were coming from, but it just seems so to me. From where you started to where you are now, and maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
But I think there's a difference because Ryan has, he has a weird brain. He's just like, he's just very, he's one of these anomalies that that can kind of morph from a mad scientist to, let's say, Daisy's cookie maker. I don't know. He can do anything he wants because he has that ability to learn quickly. Is that right, Ryan? Or am I?
He's blushing.
I think it's just I think it's an ability to sort of cross apply what I learned. You know, when I applied the technology to the filmmaking, I apply elements of filmmaking in the technology. When I do any kind of financial analysis, I have a mathematical and physics background, but I use that to write creative algorithms. But what I exploit is the behavioral psychology part of it. So it's they're people, right? At the end of the day, this is an entire business that's built on top of human emotion. And even the computers that are doing the trading now are written by a human. And that human is saying, in this circumstance, do this, based on how they feel, based on what they think. And those are fading out rather rapidly because they do a really terrible job of interacting with people who close out positions to piss off for the long weekend. And then I got MSNBC saying, oh, worries in the Ukraine dropped the market on a Friday. And we're going, no, we really just didn't want to work.
Don't you admire that, though? Like, I get so jealous of the people in Europe who have, like, such a more well-developed sense of work-life balance than us Americans are plodding away.
I would be careful on that. The European HR problems are much worse than what we have here in the States.
So let HR worry about it. I don't care.
Fair enough.
So I think we've talked about this. We've meandered through it, but we've talked about this idea of where that change came from. And for me, particularly if I look over really over the last year, the way that I've kind of framed change for myself is it's very much about internal shifts. It's how am I spending my time? Where am I investing my energies? Am I involving myself in projects that ultimately they make my community better? I'm in a relatively small town in central Pennsylvania, and a lot of that comes from being in this co-working space where we've all had opportunities to work very closely with one another and collaborate on a lot of different projects. And as I've looked over my career over the past several years, and I've worked with agencies out there, I look at being in this space, and there are days when I look around, I said, I'm kind of a stranger here, because I've had such of an outward-looking focus that really I want to look now, looking here in the work that I do, does it improve my community in some measurable way? And do I feel better about it? Do I feel good about the work that I do? And that's where the idea of change really sits with me, is how do I approach my work?
You've left us all speechless.
I know. Well, if I'm going to transition that into a question, because I'm looking at the time, and we're getting towards the end.
Yes.
Wow, that went fast.
It did go quickly. So, if you wanted to frame a significant change either in your personal or professional life, is that change about impacting the world that you're in, whether that's the big world or that's kind of your immediate space, or is it just to get by? Is it a question? Is it a matter of survival and just putting money on the table? Putting money in the bank account and food on the table.
Can it be both?
Is it for you, Matt?
No, I was just asking. I was just throwing the question out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why don't you start, since you've already opened it up?
Fair enough. Well, I think the change that you're talking about, I would agree, but I think at the end of the day, we all have to ask ourselves, what kind of a change do we want? Do we want one or both of those?
I've been doing a lot of thinking. I've already started off on this path of minimalism with my belongings, and I've started to think about minimalism with my money, and starting to think, how little do I really need to live on? I have some debt I need to pay off, but once that's done, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have a big car, I don't have much debt beyond that. Once you kind of smallify everything down to that, then you have a lot more freedom on the kind of work you can do. I think if you don't, this is obvious to everybody, right? But it was nice having a lot of money. I was born really poor, poor black child, and it's really nice making pharma money for a couple of years when I did that. It was horrible soul-sucking work, but the money was awesome, and I paid off
my student loans. I paid off all my debt. It was great, but it's after a while you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Well, there's a reason that the money is so good.
Because nobody wants to do the jobs.
Yeah.
It's exactly right. And any recruiter, that's the thing. I used to get excited that recruiters would headhunt me too, but now I'm like, that's because nobody volunteers for the jobs. That's why recruiters are needed to get people. Anyway, but once you start thinking about how little you actually need, I'm even thinking about building a tiny house. If you guys are familiar with the tiny house.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
I'm fascinated about how small you can actually get. And but I have realized there's a too small limit. But anyway, once you kind of can do with less, then you have more freedom on what you can transition to, or what's our word, reinvent. Once you can reinvent yourself. Like if I could get down where I didn't have any debt at all, I probably could be a hair colorist, and then I wouldn't need to care. So.
I think that there's two things, and going back to Jason's original point, I think there are choices that we make, and there are choices that are thrust upon us. So a number of years ago, I had what I thought was a really great job. I was very happy in it, and I got diagnosed with cancer, went away, had a little surgery done, came back, and within probably 3 weeks of my return to the job, I wasn't at that job anymore. And it was a really shocking end to what had been a really wonderful experience. And it took at least one really bad career move after that to realize just how much damage that had done to my to my sense of self-worth, my sense of self-confidence. So that rust on me. Then your choice in terms of reinvention is, okay, so what's next? How do I, to use the cliche, how do I make some lemonade out of this? Because you've been handed a big, you've been handed a big bowl of lemons. How am I going to make something decent come out of this? And I think those external circumstances happen to us all the time and much more frequently in the last 20 years than I think they ever did before that.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Without question. I think starting in the early 90s, once the internet came or started being introduced, it changed a lot of what you're talking about, without question.
But for a lot of us, and it's either a good thing or a bad thing, and change is scary. Jason and I talked about this earlier, and because we've always had change, when that lemon thing happens, Bob, it's like, oh shit, here we go again, and then you go out and you kind of do the same thing over, and it's the reason that I've had, let's say, 10 jobs in 15 years as well, right? But you make it work, and you understand, and in a lot of ways we are survivalists.
Well, what happens when we realize that change is actually normal, right? I mean, everybody talks about millennials changing jobs every 2.6 years. GenXers change jobs now every 2.9 years, right? Every 3 years, statistically, across millions and millions and millions of data points, we're going to have a new job and maybe even a entirely new career every 3 years.
That's awesome.
So what happens
That's
if
exciting.
we embrace that, right? What happens if we say, great, this is a stepping stone to something bigger and better, and I'm on board, and let's frickin' do this, right? Let's not worry about change.
Yeah.
Let's embrace this. Let's make something good happen. As soon as we start doing that, when I started doing that, my outlook changed. I got to coach my son's football team for several years. I got to be a deputy. I was a rookie deputy sheriff at 40 years old, right? I mean, this is all fun stuff. Did I make a lot of money? Nope, I didn't care. It was just fun to do something different, and at the time, something amazing. I mean, I never thought I'd be running around on Graveshift in a patrol car in Lake Tahoe, right? I mean, that's pretty freaking, right? So.
Oh, I remember you. You were on Cops. Now I knew where you
Be nice.
The point is,
be nice.
We have to embrace. we have to adapt. We do adapt. We know now, Matt. Your situation is a little bit different, but you're gonna hit your stride. You're gonna find something amazing. You're gonna do good. It always happens. Sometimes it just takes a while. But we have to embrace that change is now normal. We're not our parents. We don't work for the same company for 45 years.
Yeah.
We have to adapt.
You know what I love about being a freelancer though too is I don't feel like change happens to me anymore. If I worked at when I worked at full-time companies, I could get laid off. I worked at 2 startups that imploded out in the Silicon Valley, and I had no control over that. But now that I'm a consultant, I'm the one in control. I can quit a job if I want to. I mean, I could quit one before, but do you know what I mean? Like, as a consultant, I'm more in control of my destiny, I feel. And, like, I don't know. Change doesn't affect me as powerfully as it used to, job-wise anyway.
Change only sucks when it's forced upon us.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very
You
true.
just nailed it, sure.
I'm a big House of Cards fan. And
Yes.
when Hesse and I first started talking about the kind of laying out this particular hangout, I said, do you remember that scene in the very first season where Claire Underwood lays off like half her staff?
Mm-hmm.
And she has this moment where she's like standing in a Starbucks. She had just laid off her office manager, who had been with her for 10 plus years. And she lays her off, and she's standing in line at Starbucks, and she's watching someone who's probably about the same age as that office manager struggle with the computer just to punch in the order. And she has and it's this kind of tender moment when she realizes, what did I just do to this person's livelihood, who now has been thrust into a situation where everything changed. And it wasn't change certainly life situation changed, but more than that, it was now they're being thrust back into a workforce, and they have to look and saying, I don't know how to survive because I don't have the skills to keep pace with everybody else. And that's a very different reality than what most of us have kind of experienced, where either we said, the hell with that, I don't want to do this anymore, or we kind of chose our own path in that way. Like, that's a very different circumstance. And I think if somebody, somebody like my neighbor who has, if they have, they've been working in a relatively unskilled labor, like there's Harley has one of their big factories here, and they've been threatening major layoffs for years. And if somebody there just literally has to walk off, it doesn't have the job the next day, what does that do for them? And certainly, we can play that's the nature of the economy. That's the nature of a changing job market. But that's a very different kind of change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think though that's like what you're talking about is less to do with the nature of change or something generational, and more to do with cross-applicable skills, right? I mean, part of the reason that I think a lot of the people on this panel, yourself included, Jason, have been so adaptable is that by and large you're all communicators. And so
And we're geeks too. I think that helps.
absolutely, right? And as
Speak for yourself, nerd.
as the,
Hey, geeks are not nerds. Get your terminology right.
Sorry, Ryan.
that's very well put. But I think the point is that it's like when the steno pool vanished, right? Or the manual archivists and file cabinet operators. Like when you had these file floors in these huge institutions before paperless, before Iron Mountain, and these people were getting laid off. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Well, their role was rendered obsolete by our advancement. Like there is nothing that you can do.
Mm-hmm.
They either see that coming, they prepare for it. You as the employer can transition and prepare them. I don't know where the cost benefit is that outside of an altruistic purpose. But if you have a skill set, like a majority of you have, communication period, there's a fit in almost every industry and almost every enterprise on the planet for someone with those skills. And the longer you're active in that role, probably the better a communicator you are. And that's not something that you can just zip through school and come out, oh, I got a communications degree. To put that kid in charge of all of our outgoing investor communications, no freaking way, right? We'd rather somebody that knows how to market, to spin shit, you know? Oh, oil's dead? Well, you know, the whole ISIS thing and whatever, you know, like calm people down. What you're gonna do.
Yeah.
There's some communications finesse that's possible there, but that's an applicable skill set, right? And that's always, so Jason, to your point, it's not necessarily the economy that's responsible for that. That's just some roles just go obsolete. That factory closes, they move it to China, they do whatever. Well, when you make that decision, hey, I'm going to be a metal press operator for the rest of my life, you know, you got to think to yourself, well, what if they get rid of the metal press? Or what if a robot replaces me? That's possible. You're not going to have a robot replace you guys as communicators. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what makes me nuts about all the manufacturing jobs that are going overseas and are made obsolete by technology. You can't bring those jobs back, and I'm tired of people saying that you can.
That's right. Okay, so I want to add one last question before we go, because we're a bit over, but I really want this addressed by you guys, especially now. What is your legacy? You've been through change, and based on what you have to remember also is that when this is important, because when we were growing up, we had an expectation of what our lives would be because of what our parents told us. Now we have a chance to communicate to our children or what their expectations are going to be in life based on what we know. So what are we going to tell them?
I didn't have children to avoid that precise issue.
Responsibility.
It's really interesting, because even before you brought this question up, I was just thinking that we have 11-year-old twin daughters, and last year what's that?
And they're hilarious.
They are hilarious. They're also slipping notes under my door as we speak because I told them not to bother me. Show us the notes. I don't know. I'll have to walk over there. Oh my gosh. I'm like, they're probably asking if they can have a dessert or something. I have no idea.
That's adorable.
They were asked last year, they're in 6th grade now, like what they wanted to be. And Campbell, my one daughter, said she wanted to be an illustrator and an artist. And Hudson, my other daughter, said she wanted to be an engineer. And I said, you know what's really cool about you guys is that your jobs probably haven't even been created yet. I mean, more than likely. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, you guys can do anything. I mean, really. And we don't even know what that anything is yet.
Yeah.
True. And what brought me back to reality of kind of how far we've come is helping them with homework, and they were asking me a question. I said, just Google it. And one of them just went, I do not want to Google it. Are you kidding me? You seriously do not want to take the time to Google that? Because guess what? I'm thinking, you know, I went through the whole spiel. We didn't have this. We didn't have that. I'm like, you guys are insane. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
But it just, I'm like, they're too lazy to Google something? Really? What does that mean? But hopefully that doesn't mean too much. That'll impact their future. But it is so interesting. And with the work that I do, I really wish I didn't have to care about making money, because I haven't really for the last year and a half. And honestly, my heart, where that is, I don't want to have to. But realistically, I do. So I'm going to approach an investor right now. But they see what I'm doing, and that it is my passion, my absolute passion. And I feel blessed to know that that's really what I'm supposed to be doing, which is furthering my mom's legacy in bringing comfort to those with cancer. So I don't feel like I can just drop that and just go look for a job back in an ad agency or anything like that. I'm going to make it work. That's just the way it is. And I've been ill, you know, because you can only do so much for so long. But so it's time to get, you know, help with that. But anyway, my legacy is my mom's legacy, and I think to my children, I think it's a great example of following what you believe that you should be doing, but also keeping your opportunities open because, again, who knows what the opportunities will be for them.
That's a good one. Anybody else want to weigh in before we
Yeah,
close?
quickly, I want to say, and I hope that this doesn't come off excessively cynical, but were I to have procreated,
Oh God!
In any case, were I to have procreated, I have to tell you that what I would tell my kids about work life would be to never invest yourself in a company beyond the level it's willing to invest in you. Because, my dad was a guy who worked 44. The only time he didn't work for his one employer was when he was in the Second World War. Right?
Wow.
So that his entire adult life was with one employer.
Can't even imagine that.
That's gone. Right? And my belief at this point is that it's really best to treat the work life, the working part of your life, as a set of transactions. That I will do this for you and you will do this for me. Because I think that the employer side of the world, if you go get a job, has become only too willing to jettison what it doesn't need at the first possible sign of trouble. And so it behooves us, I think, to protect ourselves by essentially saying, okay, so I'm going to do this for you, and you're going to do this for me. But let's not pretend that you really love me, and let's not pretend that I really love you.
That's what's great about being a freelancer is I don't have to pretend that I love the company. I don't have to be like, this is the only company I've ever wanted to work for, and I love you so much. It's just like, hey, what's your project? Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Here's why I'm awesome, and I'll kick it out, and then I'm out. And
that's probably why. And that's probably why, like what Mark says about this whole freelance economy coming to the fore. I mean, I think that's the whole thing. The loyalty's gone, so everybody has to kind of just rely on themselves. And I think that's just the way. Hopefully, that's not the way it's going to be for our kids. That there is some balance there, and that there is some protection. But who knows? Okay, so with that, yes.
Well, just real quick,
ahead,
I was going to say, I'm not exactly a role model for careers because I've had like 8 of them. But the one thing I tell my kids is find out what it is you're really, really good at, and then find out who wants to pay you for doing that.
Exactly.
And it might be a big corporation. I have a son serving our country in the Air Force because he loves working on jet engines. We just saw him for the first time in 3 years because he's been deployed overseas. I have a daughter who works in public sector in Washington, D.C. My oldest son is at a startup in Lake Tahoe. We have to find out what it is that we're good at. Who's going to pay us to do it? Go make it happen. That's it.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. And if you want to pay me to make marshmallows full time, I'm totally on it.
Okay, so
I'll eat them.
Yeah, okay. We'll get Ryan to invent a machine that will allow you to scale that. Okay.
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 Anything done. No more invention.
There you go.
Reinvention.
Okay. Okay, so with that, I'm going to close. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And this has been a really interesting discussion. And we are off for the holidays and not returning until probably after January. We'll figure out what the next topic is then. But in the meantime, everybody have a good holiday, and we'll see you back in the year. Say bye, everyone.
Cheers, all.
Bye, guys.
Happy holidays.
See you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.